Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Wokingham Borough Council's Executive. I'm Stephen Conway. I'm the leader of the Council and Executive Member for Housing, Partnerships and the Local Plan, and I'll be chairing this meeting. Before we move to the agenda proper, just a few housekeeping points. Please could you ensure that any mobile devices or mobile phones are switched off? And if you're participating via Teams, and I don't think anyone is this evening, so this is perhaps slightly superfluous. When you're not speaking, please mute your microphone. Please also note the meeting's been currently webcast live. There are no fire drills planned for this evening, so if the fire alarm does ring, I think we should take it seriously and leave the building via the nearest exit and gather at Muster Point 2, which is located in the car park at the rear of the building. As you know, that's out there. Right, I'm going to introduce you to the council officers who are present supporting the meeting, and then I'm going to ask my executive colleagues to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with Emma Cockrell, who is our our Director of Children's Services. And then I'm going to go to Priya Patel, who is our Head of Democratic Services. Then we have Andrew Moulton, and Andrew is Director of Governance and the Council's Chief Monitoring Officer. And then we've got Susan Parsonage, who's the Chief Executive, and then, last but by no means least, Graham Ebers, who's Deputy Chief Executive and the Council's Chief Finance Officer. So I'm going to ask Mark to start us off with the introductions of the executive members.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Mark Ashwell. I'm Executive Member for Economic Development, Sport, Leisure and the Arts.
Good evening. I'm Adrian Betteridge. I'm the Executive Councillor for Active Travel, Transport and Highways.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Martin Alder. I'm the Executive Member for Planning and Enforcement.
Good evening, Catherine Harding, Executive Member for Environment and Climate Emergency.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, it's still the afternoon, so I haven't had my tea yet. I'm Prue Bray. I'm the Lead Member for Children's Services and the Deputy Leader of the Council.
Good evening. My name is Imogen Shepherd-Bay. I am the Executive Member for Finance and Governance.
Hello, I'm Lou Timlin. I'm the Executive Member for Community Safety and Public Protection.
Good evening. I'm Rachel Bishop-Firth and I'm the Executive Member for Resident Services, Inclusion and Fighting Poverty.
Sort of like go either way. Good, hello. And I'm Executive Member for Adult Services, Health and Wellbeing.
Yes, on the subject of when one eats, it's quite challenging when we have an executive starting at 5:30 and a council meeting at 7, which will go on for some time. But we will have to make our own arrangements. I've taken a very early tea, so I think I'm going to be hungry by the end of the evening. So if we can move on to apologies. I don't think there are any apologies because I think everyone is here. So thank you for that. Minutes of the previous meeting. Can I ask that everyone confirms they're happy with those minutes? Just show. Lovely. Thank you very much. So I'll just sign those. Pass them back. Thank you. Okay, now we move to declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest anyone wishes to make on any item on the agenda?
Apologies, I should probably declare an interest in the Charville Neighbourhood Plan item as I am a member of the Charville Parish Council.
Thank you for that, Catherine.
I'd forgotten about that.
I don't think that will, well, let's see Andrew's reassurance. Does that not disqualify? No, that's excellent. Just for transparency. So you are able to vote and speak if you wish to on that item. Thank you. You'll be very relieved to know that the next item is going to be mercifully short because I'm not going to make a statement from the leader this month because I'm very conscious that the gap between this meeting and the next one is quite short. So I'm going to forego the opportunity to talk on this occasion. So we move now to the questions that might be asked of the executive, and I think I'm correct in assuming there are no public questions, there are no parish and town council questions, and there are no elected member questions. Is that right, Priya? Right, thank you. So we move on apace, and we move to our first matter for consideration, and this is the first of a series of reports that relate to what we're going to be dealing with in the full council meeting later this evening, the budget. But this first one, I will be taking. It's the housing revenue account budget. Not because I'm trying to take away from Imogen's role as executive member for finance, but because this comes in my area of responsibility, which is affordable housing. And this item is on page 19, it starts on page 19 of your agenda, and there's not a great deal I need to say on this, other than to note that housing revenue account is a ring-fenced fund that draws its income from council rents, and those rents are used to pay for repairs and maintenance on the existing stock. They also can help support borrowing on the HRA to try and help us deal with capital projects. Now, the most important bit in this, I think, from the point of view of our residents, is the increase in the rents. Now, that increase is now set by an established formula which we approved in October 2023, and that formula is CPI plus 1%, and CPI is judged at the CPI rate in September, the preceding September. So then it was 3.8, so the increase in rents is set at 4.8% CPI plus 1%, and that 4.8% is carried through into garage rents, shared equity rents, as you'll see in the recommendations. I don't think I need to read out all the recommendations, but are there any points anyone wishes to make? It is important to recognise that from the HRA's point of view, we have to balance the needs of current residents with the long-term needs to ensure we've got enough affordable housing to be able to help residents who will need it in the future. So the future viability of the HRA is a vitally important consideration when we're having to raise rents.
I mean, I wasn't expected to speak on this because it's your report, but I did look through it, and it looks quite, I didn't see any alarm bells. It looked quite sound.
I don't think there are any alarm bells. I think it's all looks okay. If there are no more comments, can we go to support the recommendations you can see on page 19? There are 7 of them, but they all relate to charges and approval of the overall housing revenue account budget. All those in favour, please show. Thank you, everyone. That's unanimous. So we now move on to the first of 3 finance reports that Imogen is going to present. I don't know whether you wish to speak about them all separately or whether you're going to speak about them.
I'll talk about them separately because I feel that they're going to get lost in the next. Obviously, there's a lot of good news in these reports, and the next one in the next meeting it's going to get lost. So, I mean,
just for the sake of colleagues, the first report starts on page 31.
It does, yes, and basically, with the good news, it shows our financial commitments to our upcoming projects, capital projects which are funded from government grants, money provided by developers for infrastructure, and very occasionally money that the council borrows, and usually as investor save schemes, or a project that will be paid back over time. The executive summary outlines the local authorities are responsible for deciding the levels of borrowing in regards to the Sitford Prudential Code. The system is designed so local authorities can afford to borrow, can do so under a robust framework. And the capital strategy of it is intended to provide a high-level overview of how capital expenditure and capital finance in the Treasury management contribute to the provision and services. It includes details of the repayment and borrowing of the capital financing requirement. The programme contains schemes that have been carried forward as well as current schemes. Major schemes include a lot of work around the Arborfield Garrison, Shinfield, the north of Woking and the south of Woking, including new primary schools and the Bowhunt Secondary Sixth Form, sports facilities, roads, open space and allotments. We also include the Gorse Ride Estate redevelopment and bits of the Wokingham Town Centre development regeneration that is left. Both have been very successful projects up till now. So it's quite an extensive report which includes the details of these projects and how we use developer contributions. And I wish we had more time to go talk about it, but I'm aware that we are where we are, and I'm hoping that you've had a chance to read it all. We are also being asked in line with last year, for the executive to note that the Deputy Chief Financial Officer, Graham, Deputy Chief Financial Officer is Graham Cadle, isn't it? Yes. Will continue to exercise, where possible, flexible use of capital receipts policy as issued by the Secretary of State. Does anyone else have anything they want to highlight in this report? So, particular details of the capital programme?
Quickly say that I was with some people who've moved into new houses in Gorse Rise, and they were full of admiration for them this morning. And they really were. And 2, 3 of them are all disabled, and that was warmed my heart.
Well, I can endorse those sentiments in the sense that I've been to Gorse Ride on several occasions in the last year and seen the enormous strides that have been made in delivering new homes there. And those homes are of excellent standard, really good standard, environmentally very, very sound homes in terms of the heating and the energy efficiency of those homes. But the care and attention, the love that the new residents are showing for their new homes is really quite moving. And we're building there a real community as well as a bricks and mortar development. But the capital put into this is partly, of course, our own, partly we've been successful in getting some Homes England grants that have helped us as well. So it's an excellent project, and I would like to support everything you've said.
So, seeing as you're all praising the accommodation, last night at Corporate Parenting Board, we heard from a care leaver who'd moved into some of our new care leaver accommodation. Very similar story. It's her forever home, hopefully. Very, very happy with it. Very happy with the support she's got from offices across the council to enable a young person to move into accommodation, get their tenancy agreement signed, or understand all their obligations and so on. So that's another heartening thing. So
Yes.
before there's too much, it's good stuff in here, and we ought to celebrate it.
We ought indeed, but unfortunately we haven't got time to celebrate it at great length. So I think we should move to the recommendations on page 31 of your agenda, which are to approve the capital strategy for 2026-29, which is Appendix A, approve the 3-year capital programme for 2026-29, Appendix B, approve the draft vision for capital investment over the next 5 years, Appendix C, and the use of developer contributions funding, Section 106, and SIL, Community Infrastructure Levy, for capital projects, as set out in Appendix D. And Imogen's already mentioned the final recommendation about the Deputy Chief Finance Officer exercising, where possible, the flexible use of capital receipts policy. Okay. So all those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's excellent. That's everyone. And we now move to page 69 for the next item that Imogen is going to present, which is Treasury Management Strategy.
Thank you, Stephen. I mean, the Treasury Management Strategy in Appendix A is an important report that sets out our procedures, limits and objectives in using our financial resources to deliver the services and improvements that this council needs. We've been asked to note the prudential indicators in Appendix B, which are there to ensure that the key objectives of Prudential Code are met and the local authorities' capital investment plans are affordable, prudent and sustainable. Appendix C is the annual investment strategy, which sets out the investment parameters that the Council and Treasury work with. And Appendix D is the minimum revenue provision policy, which sets out the plan to repay the capital spend and is referred to as the capital financing requirement. The current approach, it follows statutory guidance, and the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government regulation has been issued, which require the council to approve an MRP statement in advance each financial year. So that's why this is here. It does a great deal detail on how the council treasury funding is managed, and the investment strategy is a great piece of work by our officers. So.
Yes, well, I think your point about the work put in by our officers deserves to be attached, I think, to all of the reports. Without our officers' hard work, we wouldn't be here approving these reports. So I think we would all like to, I'm sure, register our thanks to our officers, particularly on this occasion when we're looking at a lot of work that's gone into preparing budget papers, which are going on for approval by council later this evening. So if there are no other...
One very short thing. Recommendation 2 refers to the dedicated schools grant. I will be talking about that in one of the other items, so
Yes,
we don't need to talk about it now.
Yeah. So if I can just summarise the recommendation on page 69, we're noting and recommending to council. Council, of course, will be the final decision-making body on all of these finance reports. The Treasury Management Strategy is set out in Appendix A, and its other appendices B, C and D. And the figures included in this report do not include the positive impact from the recent announcement on compensating local authorities with DSG deficits. Once we have fully understood and agreed, this updates will be provided in future reports. As Prue said, she's going to talk about DSG later on in this agenda. So those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That is everyone. So we now move to the no, not the final. I'm jumping the gun. We move to the medium-term financial plan, including the revenue budget submission. It is our final finance paper of the evening. Imogen.
Yeah, Stephen, I mean, we know that this report will get a lot of attention later on this evening, and it details a lot of the budget items where this council intends to spend money this year, but also includes the report from the Chair of Communities and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, who spent a lot of time this year reviewing the different areas of this budget that allows councillors from all parties to ask questions and contribute to the budget setting process. And the work they have done overall is quite extensive, and that is in here. We also have the fees and charges report and the equalities impact assessment, which we have to do to ensure that any changes we make don't affect different minority groups. I'm rather disappointed that none of our councillors have come to this meeting to ask us questions, because it was open for them to come and ask questions about these reports, but they haven't done so. But I guess we'll hear what they have to say later. One of the most important parts of the report is the Chief Financial Officer's statutory report. This report is mandatory, and it is where Graham Ebers, our Chief Financial Officer, gives his legally required response to the budget, and it's presented in states and sounds despite the significant challenges caused by a severe reduction in the government funding over the next 3 years. It does show that our general fund balance, which is what we keep for emergencies, is forecast to be at stable 9.3 million. Our revenue expenditure for years 26-27 is expected to be approximately 278 million, but it will reduce to 191 million after the grants and other incomes have been applied to it. So that's how much we have left to find. We must remember that 65% of our revenue spend each year is on adult social care and children's services, leaving the remaining funding for other services such as waste collection, grass cutting, road maintenance and libraries, etc. And I think I'll leave it there because they're going to talk it to death later on.
Indeed, thank you, Imogen. This is going to be obviously considered at great length later on this evening in the full council meeting. But I would like to, at this point, second your thanks to the cross-party Community and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee for the work they did in scrutinising various iterations of the budget, various drafts of the budget over a long period of time. It has certainly been extensively examined and interrogated. So what we see before us and what we'll see in the agenda for the full council meeting has been through a very thorough process of review, scrutiny, questioning, interrogation by a cross-party committee of the council. So it just remains for me to draw your attention to the recommendations on page 123, to recommend to the Council a summary of budget movements, Appendix A, to note the report of the Community and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which we just referred to, approve the schedule of fees and charges set out in Appendix C, and approve the Deputy Chief Executive, Chief Finance Officer, in agreement with the Executive Member of Finance, to make adjustments to the fees and charges in relation to electric vehicle charges where appropriate to reflect market conditions. Those in favour, please show. And that is unanimous. Thank you. Right, thank you very much, Imogen, for dealing with those reports and for all the work you put in helping our finance team with the budgets. So, budget papers, so thank you very much. And we're now moving on to page 329. That shows you how big the budget papers are. 329 of your agenda, where we're going to get the first of our non-financial reports, one might say. And this is the voluntary and community sector VCS prevention contracts recommissioning. And I'm going to ask David to introduce this report.
And I hope you'll bear with me. I'm going to be a little bit long with this report, not too long, I hope, Stephen.
I hope so too.
But I want to bring to everyone's attention how much the voluntary community sector does in this authority. And often we overlook them, and they are the gatekeeper to stop more people coming into adult services. So they are vital. And this report was seen by HOSC on the 28th of January, and it recommends the recommissioning of our community wellbeing and prevention services delivered by our partners in Wokeham's outstanding voluntary community sector. The voluntary community sector in Wokeham makes a significant and positive contribution to local communities and their residents. It provides essential preventative and community-based services to enhance people's independence and well-being. And when you look at our recent CQC local authority assessment, that recognised how important the council's partnership with working with VCS, and it recognised that as outstanding and exceptional. And that, I think, is a picture of what the VCS does for us and how important they are. So that's a testament to their hard work and their dedication, but also the strong relationship that exists between the council and the VCS partners. And it's great that both yesterday and today I was in meetings when VCS partners were involved, not just as onlookers, but really involved. And I think that is partnership, which is so important. So each year, approximately 10,000 residents receive support from our VCS delivery commission services from adult social care. And if even a small proportion of those became reliant on adult social care, the council will be totally overwhelmed operationally and financially. And that is the bottom line. So I ask the executive to support the recommending community wellbeing and prevention services to ensure the continuation of this vital, effective and value-driven offer to our residents. And the recommendations are...
Don't worry, David, I can handle the recommendations. Okay. But thank you very much for that report, or introducing that report, and thank you for your comments on the vital role played by the voluntary and charitable sector. Our partnership with them is very, very important for the reasons you've said. Partnerships are an important part of our response to the financial challenges we're faced with. We need to work in partnership wherever we can to pool resources, human, material and financial, and so that we can all pull above our weight. Our combined efforts are more than the sum of our parts. And this partnership is absolutely vital to that. So thank you for your comments and for the work I know you have been doing to help with our relationship with the VCS. So the recommendation, colleagues, is at the bottom of page 329 and onto page 330. There are two recommendations. We approve the re-procurement of the community wellbeing and prevention services for a contract period of 3 years, with an option to extend for up to 2 years. And then we delegate authority to the Executive Director of Adults, Children's and Health to approve the contract award in consultation with the Executive Member for Health, Wellbeing and Adult Services. In other words, you, David. So those in favour, please show. Thank you, colleagues. That is everyone. Now we move to the next item, and this is the first of a series of reports that Prue will be introducing. This is admission arrangements for community and voluntary controlled primary, infant and junior schools for 2027-28, and it starts on page 337 of your agenda. Prue.
Thank you, Stephen. So some brief comments as points of clarification. There are changes to do two different things in this report. And the simplest one is the change to the common admissions system. So basically, although most of our schools are now academies, we still operate one admissions system to avoid parents having to make multiple applications. And we are being asked to approve a tweak to the admissions process for secondary schools to bring forward the date by which evidence has to be provided by 1 month. And this should help make the process smoother with fewer processing delays, as it means submissions will have to come in well before Christmas. And it doesn't affect the application window. The more complicated changes are to the oversubscription criteria, which are the order in which children are allocated places when there are more applications than available places at a particular school. So these changes only apply to the schools which count as maintained schools, and the list of those schools is in the report. There are 13 of them. While we can only make decisions for the schools we are responsible for, we do know that some local multi-academy trusts are thinking about doing something very similar. The proposed changes have all been out to the statutory consultation, and they won't come into effect until September 2027 because changes have to be made that far in advance. We are not changing any oversubscription criteria except the ones in the report. And in particular, children who are in care or have been in care continue to have the top priority. It won't affect children who have a particular school named in their EHCP either. And there continue to be criteria covering transfers between a linked infant and junior school and for children with siblings at a school. So we are getting rid of the exceptional medical and social needs criterion because it hasn't been much help to anyone. And in any case, the non-maintained schools don't all have it, so it's been confusing for parents. We are including a criterion for children of staff at the school. This affects hardly any children, and a number of schools will have it already, and we see it as being helpful with staff recruitment and retention. The big change is getting rid of designated areas, which most people still know as catchment areas. We are replacing them with measuring the straight line distance to school. So designated areas have not always aligned with the housing closest to the school. So the change will hopefully reduce the number of children who have to travel past their local primary on their way to school, and also brings admissions into line with the council's homeschool transport policy. So I hope that explains it all.
It's a very comprehensive explanation. Thank you very much, Prue. Are there any questions or comments from anyone? Well, the recommendation, which is on page 337, is actually quite straightforward. It's recommended that the executive approve the proposed admission arrangements for Woking Borough Council's community and voluntary controlled primary, infant and junior schools for 2027-28, together with the coordinated scheme for primary, junior and secondary admissions. So could all those in favour please show? That is everyone. Thank you very much. Now we move on. There's quite a lot of material in that report, so we move on quite a long way to page 457 for the Charville Neighbourhood Plan, which I will introduce. This comes from my area of responsibility. Neighbourhood plans, as I'm sure you're all familiar, provide an opportunity for local communities to shape the nature of development in their area. They come with a very substantial incentive that councils, parish and town councils, and have an adopted neighbourhood plan are entitled to 25% of community infrastructure levy receipts, as opposed to the 15 that goes to all parish or town councils that don't have a neighbourhood plan. Now, Charleville's neighbourhood plan is going through the journey towards adoption, and this vital stage we've reached is that it's been examined by an independent examiner. The examiner has made certain suggested or recommended modifications, and if we this evening as executive accept those modifications, the plan can then proceed to public vote, a referendum, a local referendum, which is a necessary stage before formal adoption. The recommendations for this item appear on page 457. I don't know whether anyone wishes to say anything. I thought Catherine might want to say something before we move to vote on those recommendations, which I'll summarise in a moment.
Thanks, Stephen. I just wanted to really recognise the work of the working group, both within the parish council and other volunteers and supporters, because it is a huge amount of work. I think I've been honoured to live in Charleville for the last 5 years, and I think the ability to set policies at a local parish village level is vitally important to help create, I'd say, more community than perhaps we've seen in the way the village has developed in the past. So I know it's great to get to this almost final stage.
Yes. Well, I would completely endorse the comments about the very substantial amount of work required by the local community to come forward with a neighbourhood plan. And as you said quite correctly, that work is not just undertaken by parish councillors or town councillors. It's volunteers from the local community who give time and effort to this. And so we should, I think, acknowledge their enormous contribution. And I'm glad you did say thank you. So if I can go to the recommendations, that the executive is recommended to accept the modifications recommended by examination into the Charleville Neighbourhood Plan, agree that the Charleville Neighbourhood Plan, as modified in accordance with those recommendations, meets the basic conditions, it complies with the provisions of the relevant provisions of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, which is inserted within the Localism Act of 2011, agrees to publish the decision statement as set out in Closure 2, authorises the Director of Place and Growth in consultation with the Executive Councillor for Housing Partnerships and the Local Plan, which just happens to be me, to agree minor factual and consequential modifications necessary, and agrees that the referendum be organised and conducted in the Charleville neighbourhood area. Those in favour, please show. Thank you. I hope you will convey the good news to Charleville. Thank you. We now move back to Prue. Prue just had a short break before she comes in for the final 3 reports of the evening. So the next one that is relevant to Prue is starts on page 535 of your agenda, and it's the Care Leaver local offer.
Thank you, Stephen. So this report is here to highlight the work that's been done to improve the support we offer to young people up to the age of 25 who have previously been in care, and basically to agree to implement the changes. We have a duty to provide a local offer and obviously want it to be as good as we can make it. Some of the things we are doing have a financial cost, and the budget for them is included in the MTFP, which we will be voting on later in Council. You can also see in the agenda that our care leavers have been consulted and have provided feedback. This is a really good step forward in my view. It proves our local offer, and honestly, I don't think I need to say anything else.
No. Well, thank you very much for that. And I think listening to those who are users of services is always an extremely good idea. They give us a very clear sense of what the priorities are. If no one else wishes to speak on this item, the recommendation is on page 535, and there are 3 recommendations. The executive approves the revised care leaver offer, delegates authority to the head of service corporate parenting to implement changes and monitor delivery as our standard offer, agree that the updated offer is published on the council's website and shared with all eligible young people. Those in favour, please show. Thank you. That is unanimous. An extremely good news item, I think. And then we're going to move now on to page 549 for the next one, approves reports. This is new resource SEND provision at Wokingham Primary phase schools. And this again, I think is an extremely good news item.
So this is indeed another good news item. We're being asked to approve 3 new units attached to mainstream schools for children with special educational needs. So 2 of them are for children with autism and speech, language and communication needs, one at Walter Infants and one at St Paul's Junior School. And one is for social, emotional and mental health needs, which is at Winnersh Primary. The capital funding's in the MTFP and the required consultation has all taken place. So with these units, parents will know that they will be getting good quality education for their child and the children can stay with their peers and be educated locally. And providing these units is part of the school place sufficiency strategy, which came to us in November under the title of the School Organisation Plan 2025 to 2030. So this is a step in the implementation of that strategy.
Thank you. And it is vitally important, I think, both for SEND pupils and their families that we have more SEND provision within Borough. It's also vital for the council's finances that we have more SEND provision in Borough because it reduces our home to school transport bill. And it's excellent news to see these new SEND units coming into place. So are there any? No, I don't see anybody indicating I wish to speak on this item. I'm going to just summarise the recommendations on page 549 so everyone's clear. The executive's invited to approve the proposals for a 12-place SEND unit for pupils with autism, speech, language, autism and speech, language and communications needs at the Walter Infant School in Wokingham, a 16-place SEND unit for pupils with the same needs at St Paul's Church of England voluntary controlled junior school in Wokingham, and a 12-place SEND unit for the same needs at the Winnersh Primary School in Winnersh. And the executives also asked to note the capital works associated with these 3 schemes form an integral component of the SEND sufficiency statement and are already allowed for within the 2025-26 medium-term financial plan with a total value of £2,020,000 across 3 projects. So all those in favour, please show. Thank you. That's approved, I'm very pleased to say, by everyone. And we come to the final report this evening. This is on page 583 of your agenda, and it's Wokingham Free Schools Options Appraisal. And Prue again is going to present this report.
I'm afraid this one, the presentation is a bit longer because there's quite a lot to explain.
Okay,
To go with it. So off I go. So back under the previous government, we bid for and we were awarded 2 new special free schools, each for 120 places, with the Ascendancy Trust, which is the one led by Addington School, were appointed by the Department for Education to run them. And since then, we have been waiting and waiting and waiting for the DFE to progress the plans. And they were originally due to open this summer, and the chances of that rapidly became 0. The provision of extra local SEND places was a crucial part of our SEND plans, not just to improve children's lives and their outcomes, but also to help us save money in the millions on independent school costs and home school transport. We were beginning to give up hope altogether, and officers had started to plan for them never being delivered, when in December the current government came up with an offer. We could either take 6.5 million in place of a school or continue to wait for them to build a school. And 6.5 million is about half what a school would cost to build, but it was on offer more or less immediately, with us having control over how we delivered the places. If we wanted the schools, we would have to wait, but no one could say for how long. So we could mix and match, take the money for one school and wait for the other one to be built, wait for both schools or take both lots of money. and we were given until the end of this month to choose. Officers looked at the options, put a business case together, and the recommendations in this report are the outcome. And it's come to the executive because it's a change to something that was agreed by the executive when we voted on the plan for the 2 new schools. So the recommendation is that we take the money in place of both the schools. And I don't see how we can really do anything else. We have no idea when, if ever, the DFE will be able to provide the new schools, and children and families and we as a council can't wait any longer. Children are not getting the best deal, and we will continue to overspend massively in the high needs block without the local places. And this is the point at which I'm going to talk about that overspend, which I referred to earlier. At the moment, the dedicated schools grant, which is where the high needs block sits, is outside the council's books. So although we have to account for servicing the interest on the deficit, we're not liable for repaying the money. 95% of councils with responsibility for children's services have a deficit, so it isn't just us. The government has made some recent announcements about the DSG, but as yet we don't have the full details. So we know that the DSG will continue to sit off our books until the 31st of March 2028. At that point, the government will take over responsibility for it. Exactly what that means in practice isn't clear. Even more recently, the government has said that this autumn they intend to write off 90% of the deficit that has accumulated by the end of this March. Doing so will be dependent on councils having something called a SEND reform plan, which has to be agreed with the DFE. We don't know exactly what that will look like, but from the briefing from the DFE that I was in yesterday evening, it will be a SEND partnership plan, so the whole partnership across the area will have to participate in it. And we think that the things we have in our safety valve plan should be able to be moved across into it, although there will be some additions. Safety valve itself was scrapped at the same time as this announcement. At the moment, we don't know anymore. So it's possible that in the autumn, as much as 90% of the roughly 50 million anticipated DSG deficit at the end of this financial year will be written off. But we don't know what will happen after that. And before the DFE takes it all over in 2028-29, there will still be a huge gap between what we are required to spend and the money we get. So even if most of the existing deficit is wiped away, it will immediately start growing again. We believe that will still be true even with the SEND reforms in this week's white paper because they don't actually properly kick in until 2029. We can cautiously welcome, I think, the SEND reforms. We don't have the full detail, but the direction is the same as we're going in, which is early intervention and inclusion. And I think that has to be right for most children. That's what they need. But we just don't have all the details yet. What we don't know is what will happen to the reaccumulated deficit when the government takes over everything in 2028-29. So it's possible that the government will write it off, but it's also possible that we will become liable to pay it off. And that would be difficult for a lot of councils, including us. So we just don't know at the moment what will happen. It's all a bit uncertain, but we are doing what we can to mitigate the risks and meet children's needs. So this executive decision means taking the money, providing the additional local SEND places ourselves as quickly as possible, which will help minimise our residual DSG deficit, as well as helping children by providing the much needed local SEND specialist places. It isn't without risk, but to be honest, all the other options are more risky. Officers have plans for how to deliver those places, and I hope you will all agree we should just get on with it. I would ask you to note the CFO's comment, Chief Finance Officer's comment. This decision is not subject to call-in because of the financial implications of doing so. We've only had a short window to work on this. It has been aired at overview and scrutiny, albeit only briefly, but honestly, the imposed timescale doesn't allow more. But in this particular case, I would think it would be very unlikely anyone would have wanted to call it in anyway, because I can't imagine anybody would thinking that more delay to the provision of special school places would be a good idea. So I would ask you all to vote for it.
Thank you very much, Prue. That was a very comprehensive background and explanation for really the recommendation we have before us. So if I can ask you to go to page 583 and the recommendations there. Are there any questions or comments relating to those recommendations? Okay then, so the first recommendation is we note Wokingham Special Schools business case attached to the report. Second, we grant authority to the Director of Children's Services to inform the Department for Education that the Council wishes to accept the funding on offer in relation to both special free schools, amounting to £12.96 million in total. Third is that we grant authority to the Director of Children's Services to enact the capital programme related to the delivery of special school places in accordance with this funding provided by the Department for Education. And the final one is we note that this £12.96 million is also mapped into the capital programme and strategy report and built into the medium-term financial programme that forms part of the same agenda as this report. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much, colleagues. That is unanimous. That brings us to the end of this month's executive meeting, and I think we've managed to complete it in time for those who are tealess to get something to eat before we start our next meeting. And just to remind you, we are actually having a pre-meeting at 6:30, so your time for tea is limited. Thank you.